What's going on, everybody? Thank you for tuning in once again. You know, we're at the NBA Report on the MBK Network with your guys, Ron and John from Still Knicks Fans, man. We got another great show for you tonight. What's going on, John? How you feeling, brother?
Oh, man, I'm doing well, man. Looking forward to tonight's show. It's going to be a really, really good conversation. We're definitely going to talk basketball, that's for sure.
Yes, we are. I've been excited for this. I was excited last week. I'm more excited now because we're here. Thank you to everybody in the chat tuning in. Appreciate you guys. David L., Jack City, Geraldine McIver, Vaughn Allen, Kerry Cox. Salute to you guys. And let's get right into it, man. You know, we tried to get this going last week, but because of extenuating circumstances, it couldn't happen. But we worked it out, and I'm pleased to say that today's show, we're going to have Coach Nick from the BBall Breakdown. He is here with us, and I just think that, you know, for those who really like the game of basketball, you're going to enjoy this conversation. It should be a fun one, so, man, stay tuned to it. Let's bring Coach Nick up in here.
Hey, what's happening, guys?
Hey, how are you?
I believe it's what we say, bing bong.
Yeah, that's what they say. I don't know if that's good luck or bad luck for the Knicks. For example, I don't know
if I can do the thing either, but here's for you guys. Here's the Knicks talk.
Yeah, this it was an interesting year this past year. We'll see how it translates into this upcoming season. What's going to be the new thing? What's going to be the catchphrase? The new fanatical thing that somebody comes up with, because they're going to come up with something.
Oh, right? Yeah, for sure. I love it.
All right. Well, Coach Nick,
welcome to the show.
Thank you for being here with us. You know, once again, you know, I'm Ron. That's my co-host, John. And we are basically two guys from Still Knicks Fans. There's three of us. It's Ron, John, and Jose. And he probably will be with us shortly in the background. He's not the camera guy. He's usually behind the scenes. But yeah, so we have our own podcast. We do 2 shows a week, and we do a third show on the Nothing But Knicks Network with Simeon Russell, which is the NBA report that you are on with us today. So thank you for being here.
Hey, I appreciate the invite. I always love coming on and talking basketball.
Hey, and I tell you, we love talking basketball ourselves. We said, you know, we were doing this anyway. Why not do it on YouTube?
Yep.
I'm familiar with this to some degree.
There you go. So one of the first questions I had for you was basically, how did Coach Nick become a coach?
Well, it's a good question. I suppose I was kind of always that kid on the court that would kind of like had that, looking at it from a coach's perspective, even from an early age. So, I mean, I think it's funny. When I was like in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, I had a Bobby Knight style coach at a very small school. And he was as volatile and as physical and like violent kind of in a way as Bobby Knight, you know, was. And I suppose that might have, while it kind of taught us how to play hard and all that kind of stuff, I think it also instilled in me the sense that there's got to be a better way to do this. And, you know, going through, I played in high school at a pretty high level. I was going to play Division III basketball, but then I visited University of Wisconsin and fell in love with it and ended up becoming a basketball manager there. And so at that point, I got to learn, you know, literally from like being on the court every day for practices for 2 years. You know, I learned there how to coach. Stu Jackson was the head coach who, you know, was a Knicks coach for a little while there. And So I got a chance to really, get a hands-on approach of what a D1 program looks like and how it's run. And that I'm not sure if I wanted to coach at that point, or what I want to do out of college, but it certainly gave me a really nice, foundation for how to progress from there. And then at that point, I kind of jumped in. I went to my old grammar school. The coach was not there anymore, and helped and was an assistant there for like the 7th grade team and the 8th grade. I coached the 7th grade team, assistant for the 8th grade team. Then I coached the 9th grade team in my old high school. And then that kind of, I got the bug, I suppose. I really enjoyed it. But what was interesting about that whole thing was that I was at a ground zero, what I call ground zero for like the age-old fundamentals that had been taught for 50 years kind of solidified right around that time I graduated college, around 94, 95. And in the last like 10 or 12 years, there's been an explosion of new fundamentals, I suppose, or a better way to coach. And so a lot of guys my age or older seem to struggle a lot with being able to, adjust and evolve. And that's what's been so exciting in the last 15 years or so, is that there is an evolution to the game. Players are playing much better because of it. And it's a better experience as a coach, I think, to be able to tap into what the possibilities can be versus forcing players to do something that you think is the ideal and you think is going on that we now know is not going on at all.
That's interesting. That's very interesting. With that said, what can you give us an example of like what are the most difficult players to sort of teach or coach?
Well, it's funny because for a long time the mindset was that player is not coachable, right? And every once in a while you get some coach, the player whisperer who can come in there and somehow figure out how to communicate. When in reality, all that coach was doing was what we all should have been doing in the first place, which was there needs to be a movement sort of in both directions. In the past, a coach would have been the taskmaster. He would have expected every player to move all the way to his direction and to completely adjust to exactly what he wanted to the letter of the law or suffer the consequences. We've realized, though, that you don't need to be that way anymore. If you have an engagement and you can kind of have a back and forth and discussion, you can eliminate all those headaches that you would have had as a coach with all these difficult players. Now, again, there's always going to be difficult players. There's one guy out there that I try to coach and I can never get through, and he's probably yelling at me even right now and being really upset about it. But in the general sense of it, like, the typical player that you're probably, asking about is a guy who doesn't want to practice hard, thinks he's too cool for school, thinks he's a lot better than he is. And so I feel like with the new methods we have to communicate, in the past, it would have been, the drill sergeant, like, I don't know, what was the movie? Did you see An Officer and a Gentleman? And maybe it's way too old for you guys, but
no.
We saw it. We
saw it.
There's newer versions of it. Even like Coach Carter, I suppose, could be a good example, where he's going to be screaming in your ear, grabbing you by the jersey, pulling you in, all this kind of stuff. And we just realized that that's just not the optimal way to coach. You could probably get some results, most likely to be a short-term effect from that. But, now the example would be like in the day that the kid didn't, sprint to the corner on in transition to get our offense going. You blow the whistle, you put everybody in the line, and you make them all run a suicide or 28, and then do it again. Or typically, you're doing a drill, a guy misses the layup. It's not, uncontested layup. You blow the whistle, you're running, lines. Well, at some point, someone once asked me, and believe me, I'm guilty of doing this. Somebody had asked me, well, how does running that suicide help that kid make that layup? And I had no answer for that. And I realized, well, the punishment, quote unquote, should be to actually do the skill that they're deficient in. Because in theory, no one's missing that layup on purpose, and they just don't have the skills yet. So why waste a lot of time, with all this kind of running stuff, for instance? Because again, running in a straight line back and forth at a predetermined distance is nothing to do with the game of basketball. It doesn't. And so why would you spend a lot of your time in practice doing that? And, if you want cardio, great. Here's 10 drills you can run that's cardio and skills all at the same time. And you can now make a much more efficient practice. And you should no longer have people complaining about, oh, I don't have time. I don't have time to teach people how to be shooters. So it's kind of, believe it or not, it's only in the last like maybe 15 years or so since B-ball breakdown started. I almost feel like 10 or 11 years ago, where this new mindset's been able to take hold, certainly with the younger coaches. And so now you can finally have like those practices where you can get down to the actual individual skills. This is a Pandora's box. I could talk for 6 hours straight without breathing about this subject, only because there's so much to reveal, which we will talk, I'm sure, more about in this show. But I cringe at what I did for the first 10 years of my coaching career, 15 years. Just so much needless running, no individual skill development. I would assume, hey, you got to go and do this on your own. You got to shoot on your own. You got to dribble on your own. And I'm like, what I realized later was, how can I run? I was a triangle offense coach. How can I expect anybody to run the triangle offense and actually score if they don't have any skills to score or dribble or shoot? And I'm thinking, I got to do 5-on-5, all these team stuff. I would spend at least half of my practice now going forward on individual skills and small-sided games broken down out of our offense. And so we can develop that better, and then the offense will work better versus me just ripping my hair out and being mad that they're not working hard enough on their own. So that's what we've been moving towards, and it's getting better every day.
Yeah, that's great. That makes a lot of sense. It's funny that what you say makes so much sense, but I've never really thought about it like that. I guess I never took the time. Even when I was playing, I never thought maybe I should be focusing.
Because we were busy running suicides.
Yeah, I was too busy running suicides and all types of other stuff.
Did you guys grow up in New York?
Yes.
Yeah, Brooklyn, New York.
Okay, because I grew up in Chicago, which is also there's a toughness thing about Midwest and the East Coast, right? So you guys must know what I'm talking about, right? I'm sure you played some version of organized basketball, and you had that coach. I've seen it. I've been to New York. I've been to practices. First of all, I went to Bob Hurley's teams in New Jersey, but close. I've seen up and close personal, but we've seen the documentary. It was awful. I can't believe that anybody would do what he would do. And it was personal, and he was insulting, and he was using like kids' backgrounds to just expose the whole team to like any little personal issues they might have had that should have been just private. Like it was the worst part about it was he did win, and his X's and O's were good for the most part. But here's a guy who was just, allowed to do that because he was grandfathered into a system because he had been doing it for so long. But anyway, that whole notion of I got a chip on my shoulder over on the East Coast from New York and Chicago. It's really, really unfortunate that a lot of players got the fun of the games just squeezed out of them, in a short period of time.
Yeah. I mean, don't I know it?
You know what toughness is?
Flashbacks. That's what we're feeling right now.
Toughness isn't like you can run suicide another 28. That's garbage. What's tough is that that you're more skilled and you're going to out-execute the other team. That's always been what toughness has been about. It's that confidence that you have because you know that you're just more skilled than the other team. And if you're not more skilled than the other team, then, that's when you kind of have to, I'm going to have to beat them up, and I'm going to have to get all physical and muck the game up. And that's a reflection on your coach who doesn't want to teach you. It's like, I love getting in there and helping players get better. I think there are a lot of coaches still that just want to find better players and recruit them and and this is high school level too, bring them in, and it just shortcuts a lot of that work. But I was just telling my daughter this is really funny. Every year we'd always have one kid who'd come in for tryouts and would trip over the baseline coming in, the gym. And you could tell right away, he's like, oh, maybe he's a freshman at the high school level. He's like, I don't know what I got myself into. This is definitely a different level of play. And the school I coached at was pretty good. It's pretty big. But we would identify at least one of those kids every year, and we put him on the freshman team. We coach the heck out of the kid, and by the end of the year, he's one of the best players in the gym. And the next year, same idea comes in. The kid's like, "Oh, I'm not going to finish the first tryout day." And we would usually we pull him aside and say, "Look, you were this guy last year. He was you a year ago, and the guy can't believe it because he's now crossing guys over and pulling up for jump shots." And there was nothing more, nothing made me feel better than being able to find those kids and just coach them and teach them and then see them actually develop nicely. That's what coaching should be. It's not about, you find a couple of these, this is COVID brain right here for you. The blue chip guys you bring in who are ringers, right? They're like, that's okay. That's fun, I guess. But there's a lot, their ceiling is already high enough where, it's harder to get them any higher than where they are. What I love is when you have a kid who's got, his ceiling is really low at the point, or his floor is really low, and you can raise it beyond his imagination. And then you got a player who just, loves the game the rest of his life. It's really gratifying.
Yeah, you just have to have someone who's willing to learn. That's really pretty much what it comes down to.
Yeah. Man, that's
all right.
that's the
I'm
best
sorry.
part
I'm
about it.
hijacking this. I'm hijacking. Okay, because I'm looking at the comments. Here, Sherwin wants to say, I am not one for positive reinforcement. I hated it. Okay. And this is like the Draymond Green argument where he's like, I need that kind of coaching. I need the negative coaching to play well. And it's definitely soul killing to hear that. And all that means is that guy never had a coach that practiced emotional intelligence. Because if he had, he would have played even more and unlocked even more of the potential. I guarantee it. We know it from science. We know what it's like when we study the brain chemistry in the face of anger and disgust, which is what a lot of those coaches try and use as motivation. We know that there's a distinct limit to your potential when you're faced with that. And some people might think, oh, I'm much better that way, and it's just nonsense. And by the way, there's a thing about girls volleyball. So I had gotten into trouble because when Tom Izzo had almost punched Aaron Henry on the bench, or whatever you want to call it, a couple of years ago in the
I remember that
tournament. I had tweeted that saying, I cannot wait for this generation or this type of coach to go retire and go away. And that tweet went viral around the world. Everybody responded to it. But in some weird way, I had girls in high school volleyball players yelling at me and calling me really awful words that are more that are reminiscent of like female genitalia. Like that's what they were yelling at me.
Wow.
And I had to, I think what I got from that was that I think there's a lot of male coaches of female volleyball, and in their desire to like make these girls in high school tough, they really go overboard with that, like, Neanderthal coaching. And so they're trained to think that they need that as well. And this goes all the way up to the NBA too. I'm not, I know they're adults and you can cuss and swear, do whatever you like, but listen, it's probably even more appropriate in the NBA level to not be that Bobby Knight guy. That won't work. We kind of probably know that anyway. And that'll come up when we talk about the Knicks. But listen, it doesn't have to be everyone gets a trophy. It doesn't have to be, but if you watch like Ted Lasso, whoever is consulting with them on the coaching side of it is really, really smart. And they're capturing exactly what I'm talking about, because the positive coaching that you can tap into and unlock of your players, I'm telling you, they've done the studies. It's scientifically proven that works, and that is the most optimal way to do it. And again, I'm not going to deny that there are guys who've gotten results like Izzo, and the other argument is that Izzo's players come back and they love him and they hug him and whatever. That's not the point. Izzo will destroy the relationship because he detonates on his players, and he's a master at like rebuilding it. He knows how to go back in there an hour later, put his arm around the kid, and then say the right things to get him back in the fold. But that's got to be emotionally exhausting, and it doesn't unlock their true potential. Doesn't mean they're not going to love him. It doesn't mean they're not going to come back and hug him and say thank you for all that. That doesn't have any bearing on the fact that he's a suboptimal coach with the way he's communicating. And I think that was the big argument against my line, was that, oh, look at how much the players love him. They don't even know that he's holding them back. That's what seems obvious to me. Aaron Henry is a good example in that game where he ended up playing like a scared kid for 20 minutes. Finally got it together after that, but the game could be over in 20 minutes by what he does. So anyway, that's
I see what you. No, that's fine. I see what you mean though, and you're absolutely right. I'm gonna get to my next question in 2 seconds, but when you said what you said, you made me think of when I first started playing basketball, and they put me, somebody saw me playing ball, and they told me something about some games and practices and stuff. I don't know. I'm a young kid. I'm like 14, 15. Sure, I'll play. Yeah. Where is it? Harlem. Okay, I'll go up to Harlem. It turns out I went to this place and like people were practicing and shooting around. I just jumped in. I took a couple shots. I did what I did. I didn't even get a chance to really talk to the coach. We didn't go over anything. The game started. Now, mind you, I'm just fresh. I'm just learning how to play ball, but I was 6'3" at the time, had good height. So they saw me automatically. They were like, okay, let's get this guy in here, whatever. The guy says, 4 down, 1 up. What the hell are you talking about? I don't even know what you're talking. He said stack. People start running behind each other. I didn't know what the hell they were doing. I looked like a moron out there. So needless to say, I played for another 5 minutes. I got a couple baskets. I got a rebound. That was it. I never played again. And I never went back again because I felt humiliated that I'm out there. People are looking at me like I don't know what I'm doing because I don't. And the coach didn't even bother to take the time to tell me anything. I was like 15 years old. I had just started playing basketball, had no idea. And John, you know the person who I'm talking about.
Yeah. So, I know. Yeah. I'm not going to say names.
Forget it. I'm done. But I still love basketball and I still played over time. But that was a sour feeling. So I understand what you mean.
And listen, I cringe still from 20 years ago, things I was doing back then that I had learned and assumed that's how you're supposed to coach. And I know that there's a couple of players out there that hate the game probably because of me. One guy actually caught me at some point after we had coached him and even said that. And I was so shocked because he was a nice kid. I enjoyed having him on the team, whatever. But he basically said something like, you made me hate the game. I think it was because he didn't get enough playing time. But it wasn't necessarily that I was like mean to him or terrible to him. But it happens. And everybody, that's the point, I think, is that can we have self-reflection? Can we try to improve? Like there's guys in England that are developing a whole new way of doing this approach where so much of it is player-based, where the players need to give the coach the feedback. So the first thing they say when they come into the huddle in the middle of the game is, talk to me. You coach to the players. You tell me what's going on. It's a terrible vantage point from the bench, especially at the NBA level. You can't see hardly anything. They're so big. You're not high enough to really see what's going on. So if you're going to detonate a player, chances are you might not even have seen clearly what happened. And that's, by the way, that happened with the Izzo thing. He detonated on Aaron Henry. And I went through every inch of that footage. There was no reason for him to have done that. He thought he saw something that didn't really even happen. So you have to be very careful about that and what you're assessing during the game, which is probably why we could take from football and have a coach up in the stands with an earpiece who can be talking a little bit in real time because they can see the floor a lot better. So, it really is. It's fascinating how important that coach can be. And what they can unlock depending on how they approach the game. And that's why my platform is here. I'm trying to help more and more people see the possibilities.
Oh, I think you muted.
I muted?
No, I apologize. I'm sorry. I just don't want to. I don't have my headphones, so I don't want to have any added feedback to the stream for those who are watching. I don't want anybody to miss anything you're saying tonight because this is a really good conversation. Being that you're talking about and you understand the negative aspects of coaching and the different things that could be changed, what would you say is probably, your favorite or most positive aspect of coaching, something that you love about it?
I mean, I think it's the teaching aspect. I was also a teacher in high school, and I love to be able to, experience for the first time a new skill for somebody who hadn't seen it before, right? Or even if it was just like to explain it in a way. So when I ADHD is a thing. Everyone a lot of people have it. Like I was diagnosed with it much later in life, but when I realized it made so much more sense for thinking back on my whole growing up process, because there were so many times when I'd be like in a class or I'd be on the court and just think, why didn't the guy or the coach or the teacher just explain it like this? Because it would have saved so much time. I would have understood it a lot better. Probably related to how I process things. And so as a result, when I coach, I try and sort of do that and give that explanation that I think would make sense to me. If you don't have ADHD, great. It's going to make sense anyway because it'll be clear. And if you do, it'll be that way. Or I'll have to try and come up with a different way to explain. And I'm sensitive to that and know how to approach that. And so that's what makes it so gratifying to me is that like the teaching of it, getting that light bulb to come on. As a triangle offense coach, by the way, like I would do the part method. So Tex Winter was a mentor of mine. He's the guy that invented the triangle offense. And we spent a lot of time talking about how to teach it, which I think is probably the reason why it didn't work as well with other teams when he wasn't on the bench. I have a feeling the other guys that did it certainly spent time with Tex and whatever, but I don't know if they spent a lot of time discussing the how, like how should we install this? And it certainly didn't spend time at lower levels like I did trying to teach the triangle offense to ninth graders gives you you really know how to teach it if you can do it there. And so as a result, you had to come at it from different ways. The part method, what I do, you break it up into 2-line drills, no defense, and then you add defense, and 3-line drills, and then 4-line drills. So as you built it to the 5-on-0, for instance, the kid's now struggling, kind of like you said you didn't really know the play, you don't understand what's going on. I could say to him, remember 2 weeks ago when we did that 2-line drill there? He goes, yeah. I'm like, okay. And we did that like over and over again. So he got bored. He goes, yeah. I'm like, that's all we're doing right here on this side. Look, you're doing that and the same thing. And then when that light bulb goes off and they go, oh my God, they start to realize how it all fits together. The 2-line drill, 3-line drill. It might have taken an extra week, an extra 2 weeks, an extra 3 weeks, but the intrinsic connections they made because of that work will last him the whole time and make it clearer when you put it all together. And that is what makes me so excited. That light bulb moment for the player, it makes the whole season worth it when you can get a few of those. And so that's what I love. I love that, just getting out there and teaching that, listen, it's fun to coach on the bench. It's fun to be in the game, but all the work is done before that. You shouldn't have to do too much of the coaching, bellowing, controlling when the game starts. It's in the practices, and that's always the best part of the season for me.
I love that he says that, because that's what Coach Tibbs is always saying, right? That's what he's preaching. It starts with practice. So
he does say that.
He does.
He preaches. That's what he says, but I'm not sure if he follows that.
Exactly. I mean, that's the thing. And I don't want to burn Coach Thibodeau down on the ground, because he's, by the way, he spent time with me. I've had conversations with him that are really amazing. And listen, his X's and O's, he knows them as well as anybody on the planet. The fact that he would even take the time, when I've had credentials to different things, and it takes 10 minutes and talk to me, I just want to make it clear that as gracious as anybody could be, and why would, and he did that with me when I was just starting out. Like, no one knew B-ball breakdown yet and anything like that. So I want to make sure that that is clear. And I've always been, as gracious as can be. But I am critical of what you're talking about, because he sometimes forgets that most of the work is done in practice. Or should be, although listen, NBA practices are kind of non-existent these days. But his attempt to control the game from the sidelines, I think, is detrimental ultimately.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you say that. So we're gonna switch gears a little bit, but because I want to know what made you create the channel that you have now, People Breakdown. What was that motivating factor for you?
Well, it all starts, and I actually did a series of videos on this in 2009 when Derrick Rose was a rookie and they played the Celtics in a 7-game epic series. I don't know if you remember that. It was back and forth. Vinny Del Negro was coaching. Tibbs was on the bench for Doc in Boston. And anyway, so I'm watching the game, and listen, it was dramatic and it was intense, but it was kind of a lot of bad basketball, and no one was talking about it or pointing it out, or there was no way to show it. And so I had been a coach before that. But at that point I was on like a hiatus where I wasn't coaching. I was doing a lot of video editing and sort of for high-end events and that kind of stuff. So at some point in that, right around 2009, 2010, when these YouTube stars emerged, and there was like 30 of them in the world that could make a lot of money just screwing around with the camera, guys like, Roy Williams Johnson, and this is going way back, or like Shay Carl might still be around, like those guys. And so someone was like, well, you should create a channel. And like at that point I was like, well, I do know basketball and I know how to edit, so maybe we should do something where we can finally once and for all explain what's happening on the court. And that's what came out of that, I guess. And that was around the playoffs of 2010 when I kind of started it in earnest. But I was also coaching. Actually, it's not true. I started in the spring of 2010. Then I took a head coaching job in August of 2010. So then I was doing both, which is not easy for about the first 3 years. But the point being was that's what motivated me, was that series, because it just needed we needed someone to point out, not that it was like the low lights, but we needed people to understand like this isn't as amazing as you might think. But then also, the tagline is it's not a channel, it's a conversation. You win. And I would respond to my comments. I would respond to the tweets. You have to remember, in 2010, if you were on ESPN and you were on Twitter, you didn't respond to anybody mentioning you. No one did. It was awful. And, anything you're watching on SportsCenter was just them talking to you in a very one-way conversation. And I was able to create a platform where we can have that conversation. You don't agree with me, or you do agree with me? Let's talk about it. This is great. And I'm convinced that was what made it blow up in the beginning, was that sort of that conversation that was happening was what people were responding to.
Definitely makes sense, especially that early on.
I agree with that. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, that's kind of the blueprint for a lot of the YouTube content, sports related content today. I mean, it's the back and forth, it's the dialogue. whether it's in agreement or not. I mean, it's the conversation. That's what what people are driven to, and I think that's the best part of it. I think that's why so many people are enamored with this YouTube thing, or even the new thing, Twitter Spaces, and being able to go back and forth and talk, as opposed to just watching mainstream media and getting information, but not having anyone hear your opinion about it. So yeah, I think. I mean, that was a great idea, and I think we're all pretty thankful for. I was pretty late to finding out about your content. I'm not. I'm gonna say I probably found out maybe about 8 or 9 months ago, but I've been glued and hooked ever since. It's really good stuff, and there's a lot of people that I have in my inner circle that really love your work. And the funny thing is, there's also a lot of these content creators do a lot of coaching in their spare time or their free time outside of their main position. So watching stuff that you put out is really informative for them, and also it's also like hearing someone else say stuff that they may see, or learning different things that they can apply when they're out there coaching their kids or whoever they're coaching. It's really, I think it's a fantastic job of you putting that channel together, and hopefully you're not embarrassed by what I'm about to say, but and this makes a lot of sense to everybody who's watching, because his channel has almost 900,000 subscribers. So obviously people appreciate the work he puts in, the content, the editing, the information quality of it. It makes sense. And correct me if I'm wrong, you weren't even doing like live videos until recently. Like everything else was more of drill based stuff, informative things. Now you've just started getting into the live aspect of it.
I mean, I used to do a lot of live post-game shows, like during the playoffs and stuff like that. So, and that's been pretty consistent. But yeah, I took my podcast, which listen, it's a business. I'm trying to monetize some stuff, and the podcast just wasn't like monetizable enough for me, so I kind of stopped doing that. But then I realized, I could do the same thing like we're doing on the video side and monetize it on YouTube, and have it be a better business model than anything I would have gotten on the audio side just as a podcast. So we've been, I once a week now at least I get on with Combo, who's a New Yorker, and we do our show. And that's been another way to more consistently be connected with the people who are watching the videos, and that's been really helpful because it helps me figure out what the next video could be. And I'll do polls on my community tab, and I'll get lots of votes, and it really helps me because obviously I want to do what people want to watch. It makes it a lot easier because think about that. If you ever try to write a paper, or you have to create something from scratch and you're just staring at a blank page, it's like sometimes I don't know what to do, and sometimes I'm lucky. Kevin Durant will light up Steve Kerr, and I'll get to do a whole. That's a great subject, right? And then maybe one of those starts yelling at me for doing that video. But at any rate, that's actually even more amazing when the players themselves connect, and let that they're watching. That is with it still blows my mind. A, when that happens, and B, when people say hi to me like on the street, that's still it blows my mind. And in New York, it happens all the time. Like I'll be walking around New York, and people will say stuff to me, and it's more there probably than in LA where I live now. So it's like it's just it's incredible that where we live now, and like the era we live where we have YouTube to be able to do that. Because again, if we didn't have that, I would have had either sports channel. Remember sports channel? Is that what it was called? Like the local whatever
sportscaster or something like that.
Yeah. Maybe ESPN, where there was like there's one job for 10 million people that want it. Like it would never have happened. So the idea that you can now do your own thing, and you're right. There's a lot of people now doing similar things to what I do in varying degrees of accuracy. But hey, it's great that they're doing it, and certainly the IQ of the average basketball fan is now astronomically higher than it ever has been before, and that's exciting.
Yeah,
right,
for sure.
Right.
By the way, before we move on to our next question, I did want to, I do appreciate the player profile things that you've been putting together recently. So I really enjoy that content.
Oh, well, I have a really cool series I'm going to do right now where I'm focusing on the top, 10 scorers in the league and what their most common sets are out of timeouts. So it'd be really, really cool to see because, by the way, most of the time they're getting like ISOs. They have to work so ridiculously hard. Luka Doncic takes shots that you wouldn't try and horse. and he makes them. Trey Young, I mean, so as a coach, it's like, let the offense do some of the work for you, man. Like, why are you making it so hard? But I have identified some of those sets that do make it a little bit easier for them. And certainly for me, when I start seeing some movement, some passing, cutting, that gets me excited. So thank you for that. And stay tuned. I'm coming up in the next few days. We're going to start releasing them throughout the month. And I'm excited about that because I think that's going to be a really interesting thing for people to look at and realize that, it isn't just like the ISO, step back, hero ball stuff. They're doing some interesting things with the team.
Nice. Yeah, guys, we've got a couple more questions for Coach Nick while we have him. But hopefully, if there's still a little time, I've started a couple questions from you guys in the chat, so maybe Coach can have some time to chime in on some of your questions. First off, if you're just tuning in, we're here with Coach Nick of BBall Breakdown, and it's a fantastic conversation. Coach is responsible for BBall Breakdown on. You can catch him on Twitter, on Instagram, and definitely on his YouTube channel. It's a very successful channel with a lot of information about basketball, X's and O's. And just, he's a big fan of basketball outside of just being a coach. As he's mentioned, if you're just tuning in, you might have missed it. He loves basketball. So this is a great conversation. I'm really excited. Well, we're really excited. Got to take that I out of it. We're really excited to have him here. So thanks for being here once again, Coach.
I love it. Any chance I get, I'm here for you.
So the question that I had for you is funny because someone in the chat had a question, and I'm just going to say their question, and it goes into my question. David Brown said, let me put that up real quick. Coach, please tell us why so many three-pointers. And so my question for you was, how do you feel about the current state of the NBA game?
Okay. Do you know what Dirk Nowitzki averaged in his career in three-point attempts per game?
No clue.
Want to take a guess?
For his career. Wow.
What he averaged for his career?
Yeah.
I'm going to say 6 3-pointers. And that's probably high.
Yeah. Ron,
if I'm thinking per game, wow. Interesting enough. I don't think he really. Yeah, I'm gonna say maybe three or 4 per game.
Yeah, right. Obviously, when I'm asking it, there's you could probably go low on this one. 3.4, and it was a lot lower until the last several seasons. So when you're asking why so many 3-pointers, what the question could very well be is why not more 3-pointers? Like for the longest time, forever, we didn't do that. Obviously, the math tells you that 1 point it's more. It's 1.5 times more. Mm-hmm. So certainly, any shot taken between 18 to 23 feet should get to the 24-foot mark. Like it's a no-brainer. When the 3-pointer came in when I was a sophomore in high school, and I was actually a really good 3-point shooter. I shot like 50%. But remember what those were. Everyone was a catch and shoot, and everyone had to be wide open. So of course, I'm going to shoot 50% because like they're practice shots. But if I ever try to take any other kind of shot, like forget it, I'd be on the bench the rest of the game. But it's criminality that Larry Bird and Nowitzki and all those guys, Dale Ellis, none of those guys got to shoot a ton of threes when they should have been. I mean, that seems silly. So the first point is. But we knew that even in like 87 when it came in, you certainly didn't want to take a shot with your foot in the line. Because that's obviously get your foot all the way behind, like get the extra 6 inches back and get the extra point. And we also had a sense like even like one step in, that's not a good shot either. Get behind the line. So we kind of understood that sort of right away, but we still continue to see that shot being taken at the NBA level for a long, long time. And then I think we're getting somewhere where 50% 3-point frequency is probably too high. But we're getting somewhere where there is an optimal, percentage or a frequency you should be taking that. So I think the reason why it seems like it's a lot now is because it was woefully too low, for 80 years. And I think we're boomeranging back to where, the ideal version, which is probably like, in the 40s, mid 40s. That said, if you could create an offense that gets you 50 really good threes a game, well, then you should take 50 really good threes a game, right? Like that's a no-brainer as well. And I think that where we're going to in the future is you're going to have 40% 3-point shooters in the court at any one time. And that will radically change the game because now you're talking about 50, 60 threes a game. Probably most of them are going to be good shots that they can hit. So I think that might be where we're going to get to at some point. And then that'll change a lot of stuff. But, clearly it opened the game up. It makes it more exciting, more scoring, everything we want. That said, that we don't have the same excitement we used to have when a three was made, right? It used to be much more rare. And that is the one thing I probably, lament is like it's not as exciting in the arena as it used to be. But at the very least, it is better basketball, I would think.
I'm going to go off script and ask my next question, more or less, for the sake of saying, this is a bit of my old school self playing a lot of basketball. Do you feel like the mid-range game, if you have a team that goes against a team that's really strong on the 3-point shooting game, like Warriors, for instance, could you tell me what would be a flaw having a really strong mid-range team, a team that would be better mid-range than they would percentage-wise from the 3-point range?
Okay, so great question. And obviously there are shooters who, should be taking mid-rangers, and we see Curry and Clay and all those guys do that. Here's the thing. When you get to the playoffs, the teams that get really good and defenses get really good, they take away the 3-point shot, right? They run you off the line. They're going to wall you off from the paint. What do you have left? Mid-range. And if you hadn't been working on that during the season, how are you going to win a playoff series, right? Without that practice and the rhythm of that. So you do need it. Here's the reason why we went away from mid-range for a while too, was that they looked at a macro, bunch of shots, and they realized, oh, look at the low percentage from, 16 feet to 19 feet or whatever, right? Well, when you include everybody in there, of course it's going to be a really low percentage, because half of those shots, the defense wants the guy to take that shot. And so it was completely sort of misrepresented in a way of why we went away from that. And I definitely lament that. We definitely need to get back to that. Certainly like the pull-up 15, 16, 17-foot shots is very viable and should be a thing. Now, what we've seen in the past, like when you look at the numbers, is that like the expected percentage of that shot is 44%, and the expected value of a three-pointer and whatever in that same area would be 36%. And then obviously, if you do the math, 36% from three is better than the 45% for, even though it's closer. You know what I mean? So I get that, like the math guys will tell you, you still have to take the 3-point shot, but there's no question when you get down in the thick of it in the playoff series, you're going to need that shot. The reason why we went away from post-ups is because it was deemed inefficient. But what they didn't do properly was, if I do a really strong post move and I lay it up and I miss, but I get the rebound, I put it right back in because of that post move, they weren't counting that. So the points per possession looks low and looks like, we shouldn't be bothering with that. When you factor in those quick putbacks off of the moves like that, it becomes the most efficient play in the half court. And we never would have gone away from it back in 2004 if they hadn't done that. When they did, like, no one had stopped to really look at these numbers. And so as a result, out of that, we had 6-7 years before anyone realized this. And that's long enough for people to not work on the post game anymore and have it kind of go away. And then the 3-pointer comes in. So the game was based, some of these changes that we've seen in the modern game are based on fallacies that shouldn't have been taken place in the first place. And hopefully we can kind of get back to, to doing that. Now, what's interesting about what we're doing now is triple threat is dead. Okay. When I don't teach triple threat anymore. I know we all used to catch the ball, rip through. We used to have to read after you catch the ball. Well, the beautiful game that the Spurs showed us was all attack on the catch. And that's all I teach now. If you don't get an attack on the catch, you can do your triple threat based on the work we do, but I don't spend any time on it. But the point of that was, you need to read before you catch the ball. And it's that kind of method of attacking that gets you forces closeouts, and now you can get, penetration and kicks or open threes. But I've been working on stuff like that in the post. So when you catch the ball, you're splitting your feet with your back of the basket and now attacking right away before the defense can react. If we can get to that, and I'll do some more videos and try and get more players in the NBA to do it as well. You're going to see, without a question, that point per possession for post-ups go up, because guys are going to be a lot more lethal with their feet attacking on the catch down low. So if I have my way, we're going to get that sooner than later. And by the way, the best 3-point shots are from passes out from the post area out, because the defense has probably turned their head. The guy catching the ball is already lined in the basket. So you want to get the ball in that area before you kick it out for the open three. So, that's another interesting. Here's another thing I'll throw it out there. I'm talking a lot. I'm sorry, but hey, the best threes are ones taken from offensive rebounds, because the defense is now scrambled. Again, the ball's coming from the basket area, so you're already lined in the basket when you're catching it. Well, wouldn't you then want to get more of those offensive rebounds to get more of those kickouts? And how would you do that? Well, play 2 big men. They're going to get more offensive rebounds that way, and you can get more threes. So we're gonna swing back to some of the old, tried and true methods and things. I think as we move forward again, we're going to realize that some of those things are really viable, and we should not have gone away from them in the first place.
This is exactly what I was telling you, Ron. We should be doing coming year with Randall, playing him more on the post. It just makes the more sense for this next
he's
team.
been saying this forever, and I agree with him. It makes a lot of sense. And honestly, I think it would allow Randall to find the comfort zone again, because I think he's doing a little too much. He had a season of some would say an aberration, because his 3-point shooting has never been that way. And I don't know if it's ever going to get that way again. So I feel like it's kind of messed up his game a little bit, because he's continuing to try to do more of that, just because the NBA game is changing and has moved more to perimeter-based basketball doesn't mean that everybody on the court has to play that way. There's some guys that can do it. There's others that should find their little sweet spot. They're 18, 20 foot. If they're in the post, you gotta live where you can dominate and what makes you most comfortable. And I feel like Julius
DeRozan
away from that.
But Randall's not DeRozan. He's not that guy. Unfortunately,
he's not right. Exactly.
That's what I mean.
He's not able to commit to playing that sort of basketball, right? And that's what I'm saying. Like guys like a DeRozan, a Kobe Bryant, they made their journey in the NBA through the mid range. Randall, on the other hand, was a different sort of player when he was in Kentucky. He played a lot of in the post, and he was effective in the post. So play him off the post, allow him to be where his strengths are, and allow him to be that facilitator off the post, not from the 3-point line. Doesn't make any sense to me. Never did.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think he kind of reminds me of like in the what's the Peanuts character that has the cloud over him wherever he goes. It's Pigpen, maybe.
Oh, Pigpen. Yeah. I think it is Pigpen.
And certainly that happened last year, right? He just seemed to be upset the entire time, and everything was bothering him. And so that's a problem that might need to be solved by just changing environment, or the surroundings.
That could be true.
Have him play somewhere else. But because he just floats into that multi-dribble ISO step back 18, 20 footer. And it's like what we learned in the playoffs that year when they made it was like that, that's, you can't, he's not that guy to sustain it. DeMar DeRozan can be that guy, and he's proved it over years now that he can be that guy, even though he's even wasn't doing as much in Toronto, but he can do that, and he's earned that shot. I did a breakdown in that year when they went on that mini run for like 15 games, like in March. This is 2 years ago, and that got them into like the 4th seed maybe, and everyone's like, oh, look, the Knicks are on their way. Well, I think it was an aberration. I think that they did a lot better than they thought they were going to do. They got a higher seed than they really wanted to, and they weren't really. That wasn't really. It was a mirage, and now they're kind of still stuck trying to like reclaim that, trying to find that lightning in the bottle. When I think it's just, let's see if we can get something for Randall and open up the floor a little bit more for all the other guys. It'll be interesting to see. How this season's going to go. But I've done a number of these with Knicks stuff, and I'm worried. I'm just worried right now for the everything and the culture surrounding it. What's going to happen?
Yeah.
Let me. That sort of brings me to my next question. Then, if you don't mind, Ron, who are the players currently in the NBA that you would want folks to look out for?
Oh, just generally across the NBA.
Well, whether they're guys who are already established in the NBA, or maybe some new young guys that we've seen come in from the draft.
Well, I've been watching kind of closely what Tobias Harris is doing this summer, and I think that he might have a kind of a breakout and just sort of really figure out how to play alongside those guys, get open shots, and really play better. So he's one guy just off the top of my head. And then I did a video just last week, I think, on the Orlando Magic, and just overall, they're going to be the most fun team in the league. So you better, be prepared to follow them, and find them on your league pass and watch them. Now, it might just happen where they're like really competitive. The game is really close. And then somehow, for some reason, with the last 5 minutes, they just somehow lose that game, right? Somehow, because, maybe they want that draft choice, at the end of the year. But before the last 5 minutes, and before they might bench somebody or whatever, someone may say, oh, my hamstring hurts, I got to sit, coach. I don't know. But before that happens, you're going to see a really fun team. And so all those guys, and I'm telling you, Paolo Banchero is going to be Rookie of the Year. He's going to be such a fun player to watch. Franz Wagner is really fun to watch. Suggs. Mo Bamba. They're going to be the most fun all the way across the board, and I think they're going to surprise a lot of guys. By the way, I even torched the Knicks on Twitter for I don't even know why I did it, but I was starting to think maybe the Magic are going to could compete with the Knicks for that spot where they're going to be in the East. And that would be, I imagine Knicks fans are going to pull their hair out, 5 times over if the Magic pass them by faster than they get up there in the standings.
Well, what we do know is that we haven't won a series against them in the last year, so that's what we do know.
Is that right?
That is,
yeah, we lost all 4.
Sad truth. It's a sad truth, and they didn't even have the type of talent they have now. It's a sad truth.
Yeah. No, I think that they have more talent than a lot of teams in the East. It's just a question of like they're still so young, but I don't know, man. What I saw from Banchero and Duke, and what I saw even in the summer league, which is not always the easiest way to figure out how that translates. But I mean, I don't know, man. I think this guy, he's the real deal. And then Brunson coming in is obviously going to make them better. But how much better? And did Brunson feed off of Luka, and that's why he was doing so well? I did a video and I showed how it could work with the Knicks. You can check it out. I found plenty of evidence that Brunson made Luka better. So he was also that guy, but over 82 games at his position, at his height, and I don't know. It's going to be really interesting to see if he can do it. Fred VanVleet has been able to do it at that size, for the most part, although he hasn't always held up either physically. But I like Brunson. He's a tough as nails kid. He, his college development program is the gold standard. So, so it'll be
Villanova,
interesting.
right? Villanova.
Jay Wright produces his, and we've seen glimpses into how he trains the individual. So we talked about. I don't know if I talked about this to you guys now. I forget which conversation I had, but if I were coaching now, I would spend half of my practice on individual instruction, and a lot of it would probably be rooted in what they do at Villanova, because it is that good.
Nice.
Wow. Well, for the sake of time, I had a couple questions that were Knick related, and this is nothing but Knicks. Even though this is the NBA report, we like to try to talk about other teams and other things going around in the NBA. But the Knick fan base is strong on nothing but Knicks. They're not trying to hear too much of that. They want to hear about their Knicks. So I understand. I'm a Knick fan too. John's a Knick fan. We get it. What do you think about the Knicks' current team and their offseason? What's been going on? I know you're inundated with all this Donovan Mitchell stuff, but we can't talk about what we don't got, right? So if Donovan Mitchell becomes a Knick, he becomes a Knick. But what we do know is Knicks got a young team still, and they've got some pieces that may be promising. We don't know. We got to see how they get played with Thibodeau and the rotation and all that stuff. But we did get a nice acquisition in Jalen Brunson. What do you think about the Knicks' current offseason?
So, they're always the ones who they want LeBron and they get Amare, right? And they want whoever the top guy is, and they always kind of get a consolation prize for whatever reason. Now, listen, Madison Square Garden is still the finest arena to go see a game. I mean, I grew up in Chicago Stadium, and now that that's gone, Madison Square Garden is that place. So it's weird to me that it would be as hard as it is for them to sort of be that destination. I know maybe the weather obviously has something to do with it, I guess. But I like, obviously they've upgraded. Brunson is better, will give them better play in the backcourt than what they had. And by the way, I did a video the year before where they brought in Fournier and Kemba. That shored up some things they had issues from the year before. So there's competent decision making, and they're trying to improve. I don't know how Donovan Mitchell works as a backcourt alongside Jalen Brunson. I mean, they should be kind of tough on the offensive side, but then the defensive side will be tough. And Mitchell Robinson will then have to, block every shot that comes his way, which he seems to try and do. So that's good. I ran into him at some point, maybe after a game a couple of years ago. And I was like, do you try and block every shot? Because he must have had 8 or 9 blocks in that game. And I'm like, did you try it? And he looked down at me and he goes, yeah. I'm like, yeah, it feels that way. I was going to hold my drink away from him. I thought he was going to knock it out of my hand. But and at what expense? His development has been throttled, I suppose, by playing guys like Taj Gibson too much, or even Julius Randle. We need Emmanuel Quickly to play 25, 28 minutes a game. We need him to develop quickly. We need Obi Toppin to play 25 minutes a game. Like, who cares if you lose a couple extra games because they're learning on the job? Like, that's the guys that need to play a lot and develop more. And that's the question is, I don't know. Jericho Sims, like, I like him. And he's talk about traditional big man. Like, that guy comes out of 1995, just chiseled and ready to go. But we need those guys. Like, let them play, let them, make the mistakes, let them develop and get them on a faster track. And I think they'll be rewarded in the future for that. If you want to just try and grind it out and play, Donovan Mitchell or play, Brunson,
Barrett,
40 minutes a game, then I don't know, man. I think you're going to grind it out. You're going to maybe squeeze out an extra win, and maybe you make it into the play-in, and then you're so exhausted that you don't have anything left after that. Yeah, even the Cam Reddish thing. Cam Reddish comes in, and it wasn't like they were having a great season anyway, but like Thibodeau didn't want to disrupt this amazing, bench he had, even though again they weren't winning a ton of games. I don't get it. I mean, Cam Reddish could be really good too, and he needs to be able to play. So I'm confused. I don't know how I feel, but I don't feel great. And I think we're going to find out in the first 20 games. You're going to know. And if they're 7-13, Tibbs doesn't keep his job. I don't think, does he?
Yeah, I don't think so. But
yeah, that's a tough one. I don't know. I kind of feel like he's going to get a long leash because of the connections with Brunson. But I do think that, I agree that if the Knicks get off to a horrible type of start, or they have a sustained amount of losing, Tibbs could definitely be in big trouble. I just don't know if that's going to happen, because I kind of feel like this talent that they have with a better facilitator in Brunson, and meaning better facilitator for the Knicks, because he might not be the greatest in the league, but for what they have been accustomed to, I think he can make a big difference. I think they'll be a better team. I think that they should be okay, and Thibodeau will probably keep his job.
All right, because last year they won 37 games.
Right.
So didn't make the playoffs.
And they also lost about 6 or 7 games, having a 20-point lead going into the second half.
Yeah. Well, by the way, that's the whole nature of the threes. I do want to make one quick point, because if you want to focus on the mid-range and rely on that per se, and teams that get outscored by, I want to say it's like 6 or more three-point makes in a game, if the teams that score 6 or more win 88% of the time or something crazy like that. So it's almost like you can't afford to get outscored from the 3-point line more than 5 in a game, or else you're going to lose no matter what you do defensively. It's too much of a gap. It's 15, 18-point differential in the 3-point side. So the only way to combat that is you got to make some threes, right? Like, you can't, because a lot of times, they let's say they hit 11 threes and you hit 4. Well, 11 threes might not be a ton. You might be doing okay, but if you're only making 4, you're going to lose that game. It's like pretty much almost guaranteed. So the only solution I can see is you got to make more threes. And that's the next question is like, well, where do the Knicks find that besides like Fournier, who, is a great shooter? Who am I missing right now as far as 3-point shooting this year?
On the Knicks?
Yeah.
There's no one.
You said it. Fournier.
That was it.
Maybe Quentin Grimes, possibly, if he can become more consistent.
But nobody hit over 40%.
Yeah, it's Fournier. That's it.
It was only.
Yeah, quickly I'm looking at it. It was 39 his rookie year and then 35 last year. So that's like at least like they're going to have a step in his direction. There's a little bit of spacing there, and I have no doubt quickly it will improve. I'm sure it'll be better this year. I mean, most of those guys work hard; they'll improve. So
Barrett shot 41% the year before, and then this year he went down to 37.
Who did?
RJ Barrett.
RJ Barrett, right?
Oh yeah.
So everyone had a dip
on RJ too. I did a video on him a couple of years ago and was like, okay. But then there's a little bit of a stagnancy there as far as development. But I don't know. If it were me, I don't see this core going to pass the first round. And if that's the case, it's just why wait? I would trade Randall, I would trade RJ, and let's go from there and build from the ground up again.
So once again, for the sake of time, because I know we got a hard out coming up. John, did you have one more question? I'm sure. Are you good?
No,
all right. So I had one quick question for you, and John, you got to go. I'll just ask this question, get Coach's take on it, and a pleasure, brother. I'll see you on the next one.
Appreciate you guys. A pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, John. I appreciate it. This was great.
Take care.
So let me do this because this is going to get all crazy. I'll drop you down, John. Okay. So we don't have the headings and titles because it's a different situation. I don't think you want to see Ron and Coach John. It won't say Nick.
All right.
But anyway, I wanted to ask you this question because I think this is one of those that I don't know if it's the whole fan base, but I know like 90% of the fan base would love to have the answer to this question. Do you think a coach like Tom Thibodeau can change his ways? Because that's a big one for the Knicks fan base. There's people who love what he can bring to the table for the Knicks. His X's and O's are great. His defensive understanding with the right personnel. It's fantastic what we saw him do with guys like Reggie Bullock and Elfrid Payton. And he hasn't really had that type of situation in the backcourt. This is a different Knicks team. But do you think he can adapt to the fact that he needs to open up the offense? He's not known for his offense. Can he be a little bit more lenient with his defense? And can he open up the rotation? I mean, we got a little bit more talent on this team this year. Well, can he change his ways?
Well, everybody can always change, and we've had plenty of examples of that happening. So what's the issue? Because from my thing, and I didn't watch the Knicks close enough last year to really get a feel for it. But in the past, when you've watched it, you can hear him on the broadcast over the constantly bellowing out orders, right? And the offense, it's the defense, it's whatever. And I think that style where he probably thinks, well, I got to be on them, so they're focused and they're concentrating. I think that's also what wears out on the players over time, to the point where they end up tuning him out. And so I think that is the biggest question of, can he change that and just sit down a little bit, let the players know with his body language that they're in control of their destinies, and he can trust them to do the right to play the right way. I think that's really important. I know, like for instance, Rick Carlisle in Dallas, when he had Luka, he'd call every single offensive set, every single one. He's a real control freak in that manner, which is very rare, and it doesn't always happen that way in the NBA. And so the year he finally stopped doing that is when Luka, they had the number one offense, ever, the highest offensive rating ever, because he finally said, you know what, Luka is a genius. I'm going to get out of his way. I'm going to let them play a little bit. And that's what he got rewarded with. So I think that Tibbs could take a page from that and let them play a little bit more. Now, obviously, everyone kind of does the same kind of motion offense these days, so it's almost like generic, and what he does is what everyone else does. But it's that micromanaging thing that I think will weigh on players. That certainly seemed to weigh on Randall. And it could lead to, correct me if I'm wrong, there were some moments they were headbutting, I think, right? Didn't Randall and Thibodeau have something that was public, or no?
Well, not really. For whatever reason, any issues that were revolved around Randall, Tibbs was very silent, and he never really headbutted with Randall at all. And I think that's another reason why the fan base is very critical of a guy like Thibodeau, who's such a disciplinarian, a tough guy. He gives this aura like he runs a tight ship, and they don't feel, or should I say, me to a point too. So I want to say but we don't feel like he held Julius Randle accountable for his actions.
Yeah, and that's tough, because when you have like your star, like Steve Kerr is an amazing coach, and part of it is because he's coaching Steph Curry, right? Who is a guy who will buy in, and he will lead, and he will keep everything flowing as an extension of the general manager and the coach and everything like that. Randall isn't that kind of ambassador in the same way, right? So
right.
He's got to figure another way out. So that's a question. I doubt it. I don't think Tibbs is going to completely be able to just certainly change his whole communication method at all. I think he's maybe around the edges. He can kind of adjust. We know when he wasn't coaching, he went around the league during that year or two when he had like a hiatus or a sabbatical or whatever, and he studied. He went to practices. He kept showing up at everyone else's different practices. I saw him in other NBA practices, and he was learning and talking, and so he's inquisitive. He wants to know and bring stuff in. Hopefully it will relate to the communication methods as well. But I don't know. I think at this point, either you do a thing where like the Heat and Spoelstra, they kind of like they bring the players in that they know are going to be able to fit in versus the other way around where trying to be a coach that could be a little more malleable or a little bit more accessible to everybody or different kind of players. And short of that, and especially when you're in a situation like the Knicks where they're just desperate to try and get a winning team, they're gonna they're throwing a lot of money. Like, I don't think Donovan Mitchell is the guy that they would need, honestly. I don't think that's the guy that they should get, and they shouldn't certainly give away the store to get him, right? Danny Ainge has this weird, like, first of all, because he got so many picks for Rudy Gobert, like, obviously he thinks that Donovan Mitchell should get more picks or whatever and more. And quite honestly, I don't think that any team that's going to do that is probably going to end up getting the short end of the stick on that one. Even though I like Donovan Mitchell, I just don't think he'd be worth, 3 first-round picks and 2 starters or whatever they're going to want, right?
Right.
Now, if they could package RJ and Randall and a first-round pick, great. Send that over to Utah if they would do that. Would they even consider that? Is that crazy?
I don't think Utah would because it looks like Danny Ainge is in for the full rebuild. So
Right.
One, he doesn't want to take on a 28-year-old and Julius Randle with a little over $100 million contract. And then you're going to take on RJ Barrett in the 4th year of his rookie contract, which means you got to pay him after this year.
Yeah,
that's right. It looks like he's trying to avoid that. It was part of the reason why I guess the Knicks are trying to throw Cam Reddish in a trade for Donovan Mitchell, and they don't want Cam for the same reason. He's in his 4th year of his rookie contract. So
yeah, that's too bad, because like if they could get something good for that's what I'm thinking. Like because I don't think Randall has a huge value right now in the league. Right, he's not a three-point threat really. He's a ball hog, right, or his black hole. He shoots very inefficient shots when he takes them. They're very difficult. And it's too bad because there is a version of the Matrix where Randall can be very viable, but maybe as like the 3rd guy on a good team, not the 1st guy. And so, and I get it. Like, you have to coach what you got. And so that's where and another reason why he's probably not like as hard on Randall, but there are other ways. And certainly, like for all the criticism I might give John Calipari for being a coach, he has that Ted Lasso thing where he knows how to communicate with any kind of player and, get him to play hard and get him to kind of do what he needs him to do for the most part. And so I think that, Tibbs might be wise to try and channel that a little bit more. And if you can get a happier Randall, you'll probably get a more productive Randall. I don't want to see another season where he's just, upset the whole time and you know what I mean, and kind of brooding and mad. It's like it just makes the whole season a drudgery. And
right.
And if you're only going to win 41 games anyway, like you might as well make it fun, and try and maybe play over your head. And that's the other thing we talked about it with the 3-point shooting in the modern era is that to play over your head means, well, to get hot from 3, I think, right? That's what the variability you can get and maybe, get hot and then compete against a team you shouldn't compete against. Well, it's hard to make threes when you're in a negative mindset. You gotta have some of that flow going, have that favorite song in your head going while you're bouncing a little bit, while you get that pass and you shoot it. Like, that's the name of the game. You can't shoot the 3 harder, right? You can't do it harder.
Right.
And coaches will demand and drill and scream and yell, and it's like that's sort of it goes against what the modern game stands for. So that's another reason why maybe Thibodeau needs to radically change, and I don't think he can. I think he can change on the margins a little bit, and I don't know if it's going to be enough.
Gotcha. I don't want to keep you. Do you have maybe about 5 or 10 minutes just to do some chat questions?
Yeah, sure. I'm having a great time, and I need dinner later. I'm on the West Coast, so listen, if you guys are still out there and want to talk, let's do it.
Hey man, I appreciate. Thank you, and I'm the same way. I got my dinner. It's going to be microwaved in a minute. So.
All right, that sounds good.
Let me do a little bit of this, showing the chat a little love if I can. Salute, Sherwin, once again, thank you for being here. King Puppy NYK, appreciate you. Angel Torres, Worldwide L. I see Hard Will is in the building. Worldwide L and Hard Will both have their own podcast. It's called For the Love of the Game, with the 4 as the number, OUR, Love of the Game. It's really good. They do a lot of interesting Knick talk, as well as they get into other things, boxing, whatever. They're sports junkies, so it's a pretty fun watch.
Love it.
JJ, salute. Let's see. Delano Steele Jr. is in the building. Says, Sincere the Genius. Jet Life for Life is in the building. Infamous New King is here. It's Me is here. Bodega Wi-Fi in the building. Illmatics, Jerry Fitz, Deron Wayne, Marcus Miller, East Blue Drew. I'm doing rapid fire, guys. George Brissida or Brissetta. I hope I said that right the first time, because the second time didn't sound right. But thank you for being here. Appreciate you. Josh, aka Uncle Fulio, is in the building. Freeman 48 is here. Cormega is in the building. Racknu Nunep Taylor. I'm going to say R. Taylor, okay, because that I don't want to butcher the name. I'm sure it's interesting, and I would love to learn the pronunciation. Tariq Graham is in the building. Dale Sinclair is here. I feel like I said Jerry Fitz already, but if I haven't, Jerry Fitz is here.
Fitz is not happy with my take on Ted Lasso.
So it's okay. It's okay, Fitz. It's okay. Ala Wise is in the building. Julian Tran is here. Let's see. A couple more. Chef NYK is in the building. Manchild is here.
Yeah, a lot of people. You're gonna get through everybody, huh?
Yeah, no, I'm trying to get through a couple people. Zigzag Zagala is in the building. Yeah, I think OK is in the building. Kept Giggles, Amal Fuller, Rob Al is in the building. DJ Shuttle is here. What's going on, guys? Appreciate y'all. Yeah, I try to make it my business to get through as many as I can until, we get to the point where the numbers are just outrageous. You just can only do what you can, but it is what I'm sure your numbers get pretty ridiculous.
They do. I couldn't read everybody.
I can imagine. I can't imagine. Anyway, let's see if we could get a couple chat questions up here for Coach. Actually, Jerry Fitz had a question earlier. He said, Coach, why couldn't Phil Jackson get through to Melo? And why couldn't Melo accept the triangle? I put blame on both. Phil not getting through Melo, not accepting the Jordan Kobe role. Thoughts?
It almost would be worth going through to watch it again, because my memory was like he played it. He was in the offense and he was doing what they kind of wanted to do. But what's funny is that Phil had to go through that same thing with Michael in the beginning. Michael did not want to run the offense, equal opportunity offense. He didn't think, Horace Grant could handle the ball on the wing at all. That didn't make sense to him. And it took a while. It took seasons. And, at that point, Phil didn't really have seasons, right? They were under the pressure to get it done right away. They implemented the triangle in Chicago over a year and a half, where they would run a little bit, and then they would run normal sets, and then they, slowly ramp it up until they went pure triangle. So that was one thing that he had, like from NJ, that he didn't have, I guess, with Melo. Now, remember, it was Derek Fisher coaching, right? Not Phil. And so that's different, right? Phil is not exactly day-to-day. Derek Fisher had an interesting tenure, to say the least, in New York. So I don't know if he was a little bit distracted or whatever from that. But and then they didn't have Tex. Tex was not there either, which is, again, that's sort of the denominator when it worked really well in Chicago and LA. Tex was there to help them implement it. So right. And the other thing was, in LA, they brought in a lot of veterans who had run it in Chicago before. So, John Sally came in, and Ron Harper and those guys. And that was a really big help. And they didn't have that same kind of reservoir to pull from in New York. So all those things, happened. And then as a result, it was also the time. What year was this? Was this 2012, 2013? Right when, whatever that was. It was in the moments when, and by the way, I wouldn't run the pure triangle anymore either. I feel like there's a couple of cuts to begin with that are too slow. You have to wait too long, and you can't kind of get the offense going. So it would have required a little bit of tweaking anyway, which Phil didn't want to do. He wanted to run it exactly the way they had been running it, from the Bulls. So all those things factor into the reason why it wasn't going to be successful anymore anyway. But I think those are all a lot of, pretty good reasons as to why it wasn't, he couldn't get it quite to work. But I'm not sure I'd put it all on Melo, for refusing. I think he did it. I think he was able to run pinch post and do some stuff out of it that was his normal production.
Okay. All right. Thanks for the question, Jerry. Appreciate it. Bodega Wi-Fi He had a question. He said, NBA practice is non-existent. Please explain that, Coach. How does it affect development?
Well, especially during COVID, like they had less and less practices because they were worried everyone's going to get infected, and you put them all together and they're breathing on each other. That could rip through the whole team. But during a typical season when there's no COVID, like you're on the road, you're back and forth, you're tired, whatever. Like they're getting rid of shoot-arounds. A lot of the teams don't really do many of those anymore. And that was a chance to just at least walk through things. And then on the off days when they would have practice, it's like, they probably don't do a ton. And certainly I think by February or March on, they're really not doing anything. And that's the problem. Now, I've been to a number of Warriors practices, and at the very least, even if they're not going to do anything, they would still run a couple of their drills that take 15 minutes to do each on defense. They would always get in their defensive work, which is, indicative of why they're such a great defensive team. And the rotations are so good. Now, obviously having Draymond there is important too, but they execute their rotations so well because without question, Kerr makes sure, even if they're not going to practice very much, that they get their defensive work in. A lot of teams don't do that though, and a lot of teams don't have the organization organized practices either, and they don't have as much focus. Believe it or not, even though when you have professional coaches and you have a whole lot of them and they're all around and they all have big plans, sometimes those coaches are suboptimal. The best coaches I've ever seen are in a high school level. It doesn't mean that when you get to the NBA, you have a Pandora's box open to you that you learn all this new stuff. That information is there to have wherever you are, whatever level you are. And sometimes the NBA is suboptimal. They don't quite, for what a lot of reasons, can't get it organized, can't get the players to execute. And whether it's not their fault or not, it's their fault at that level. So I think that's what that means. I think that, at some point in the season, they hardly ever practice at all. And you'd be lucky to maybe show them some video where they can look at it and then hopefully they run it, on the court properly. I've seen the Warriors where, they'll install a play 5-on-0 for 10 minutes and then run it perfectly. Then I've seen practices from other teams where they do the same thing and they can't get two of the players to be in the right spots for the whole possession. That happens all the time as well. And then it doesn't look as good. It looks so much better for the Warriors because they've got those guys who are just, they all had multiple years in college. They're all just high IQ and team players. It doesn't always work out that way personnel wise. And as a result, the practices suffer and the games suffer.
Yeah, no, I mean, that makes sense. I think, and I always say that, that Warriors team is special. That what a mix of offensive firepower, defensive weaponry they got over there, the IQ. They're very smart basketball players. And you know what? Even though you got somebody who I feel like may be moving on from the Warriors not in the not too near future because of his contract in Draymond Green, you can't fail to mention what a benefit it is having a guy like that on the court. He's a lot, but he's incredible. He's incredible. And if the guy had offensive chops, I mean, forget about it. He might be the MVP of the league, but he's not. So,
facts.
Shout out to Justin L. This is less of a question, more of a statement. He said, Coach, Randall at UK was pure energy, auto double-double, getting the ball, driving, paint touches and elbow touches and attacking off glass, weak side help on D. Effort is how Drew plays over his head.
Yeah, I mean, and that's that kind of positive frame of mind that you need to get Randall in to do that, right? And it looked like he just didn't really want to be there. I mean, I'm trying to remember how many Knicks games I watched the second half of the year, because at some point I think I just sort of had to be focused on the other teams. But I have in my mind's eye moments where he's just kind of stalking around and angry, right, and upset about something, justified or not. And that will affect your play. That'll affect your energy, and you won't play maybe as hard. And I think that's safe to say that he didn't necessarily tap into that positive energy, right? He didn't play as hard as they needed him to. So, it's a new season. Maybe they could start fresh and come in and with is Brunson the guy though who the really good point guards can massage egos and can get people feeling good about themselves? Brunson is going to have to do that. And I don't know if he's that guy. Chris Paul is kind of the opposite of that, right? He sort of is the old school version where he's going to get on you and in his mind, he's motivating you to play better. But we've seen with him too, he wears out his welcome after a number of years because guys are just so tired of him, ragging on him all the time, and he thinks he's coaching them up and really doing it. But and by the way, Chris Paul, gold standard for point guard play. There's no question he's the gold standard, but he'll do it too, where he doesn't, he'd be much better with a little sugar and less, I guess salt is the is the expression.
Yeah.
And,
I agree.
It's not soft. It doesn't have to be soft. It's just, we're talking about optimizing. And that's what, Thibs is going to have to do. And Randall's going to have to figure it out too.
Someone told me many, many years ago, I was young. I don't quite even remember. I'm trying to think. It was some coach. Man, I'm trying to figure out if maybe it was, I think maybe it was at the time I used to play at the YMCA. And it just so happened there was one of these coaches that, I guess he liked to scout players from the YMCA because he had these traveling leagues that would play also in Harlem in New York, but they would also travel and go to like North Carolina, other places. So I guess he liked my height. He wanted me to play. But he said one of the things that he wanted me to understand was like, it's not about being physically tough. He's like, sometimes you get on the court and, you're ready to fight people and get aggressive and you're doing too much with your body and you're being real physical. He said, the key to being a good basketball player is less about being physically tough. It's more about being mentally tough. I forgot that, man. I'm trying to remember the name of that coach and I can't remember, but that was great. I took that to heart and I said, you know what? Okay, I'm gonna think about it, coach. I'm gonna try to be different.
Well, and then as a aside to that, you almost can play too. It's almost like playing too hard is detrimental to your play. You get off balance. You're going like too fast, and you're not, in rhythm the way your body needs to be able to perform tasks like dribbling and shooting, right? So, defense is the one thing maybe you can be having smoke coming out of your ears and really, bearing down. But when you're on offense, you don't want to necessarily play that way. So it gets schizophrenic because you have to go from an intense ball of rage on the defensive end to like somehow relax on the other end. That's hard to do. The best players, the best players played 85 or 88%. They just work to make that as better than someone else's 100%. So, but everyone should be looking at that and say, I don't want to play 100%. I want to make my 90% better than everybody else's 90% or 80, whatever that is. And that's how you can then stay on balance. Because I was that guy who I played too hard. And I ultimately held myself back thinking that I had to play. That was my edge. When in reality, it ultimately, got in the way of me doing more skill development. And I was a gym rat. I would have done any skill development you ever would have told me to. But all I knew was I was going to run harder than you and play and faster than you and wear you out. And rather than let's work on some really cool, crossover move to break it down or a step back 3-pointer, any kind of skill level that we didn't know about. We didn't have it like that. We have it now. And it's actually it's related to like golf or tennis where you have your cross court. You have your down the line. You have your approach. Well, I remember going to work in the gym when I was a young high school player, and I was going to shoot 500 shots, but I had no idea what shots I was going to shoot. I just knew that there's a number I should be doing because that's what all the best players did, right? But I had no sense of, okay, I'm going to work for 20 minutes on, jab step, whatever. What I mean? It wasn't organized that way. Now it is, and players have shots in their bag and they have moves in their bag they can work on. We can get defense out there to help them make a game like. All those things are so important now training-wise that we didn't really have back 30 years ago, 40 years ago. So anyway, those are the reasons why you'll see better and better play at every level going forward.
Yeah, and when you were saying that, you're talking about working harder than everybody else, giving your all in practice and doing things of that nature. You kind of, for whatever reason, it triggered Obi Toppin in my head because I remember when Obi first got to the Knicks. He was so proud when they were interviewing him. He was so proud. Yeah, we were running this type of drill and that type of drill, and I finished first, and I had the fastest time that any. That's really something he was looking forward to doing. He wanted to show that he could outwork and do these things. Now, the issue may be is that on the basketball end, for what the Knicks need, it doesn't necessarily translate as much. Your work ethic and how hard you're working, how fast you're moving up and down the court, how quickly you're doing things is great. But for, the Knick fan base, for the Knick team, they need him really to start honing in on a skill set of things that he can bring to the table. And part of the reason why he struggles so mightily in the first season, and Thibodeau didn't give him the type of time that he needed, because he didn't see enough quickly enough for him to say, I can have this guy out there. Even if he's a little bit of a defensive liability, he's showing me this on the offensive end. At that point, Obi was still trying to figure out his game, what's a go-to move for him in the NBA and all that stuff. You know, the speed of the game is fast. Figuring out all that stuff is tough for a young rookie. And Obi, I guess it's also tough, and I don't want to go on a tangent about it, but because of the fact that he's at an advanced age. I mean, he was 23 when he came, and now I think he's 24. So it's tough. Like, you put so many expectations on him thinking, hey, he should already know this because he's older. It's not necessarily fair.
And that's a great point as well. I can remember, like, you know, who was it? Sam Mitchell or somebody talking about it years ago when he had a rookie on the team who comes in and, you know, he didn't have the right footwork coming off of a pin down or something like that, right? So to me, like, you asked me, like, what my favorite part about coaching is, it's the teaching part. It's like, oh my God, you haven't seen like the right left footwork coming off on the left side of the, or on the right side of the court, you know, and how to get a shot off there. This is great. This is gonna be like you watching, Willy Wonka for the first time. This is great. I'm excited to do this with you. Well, Sam Mitchell and a lot of coaches from that era, my age or older, would have been like, what's the matter with you? Why don't you know that already? What, did you not learn anything in college? Well, if you say things like that and you use anger and disgust in your voice to communicate that message, do you think that the player is even going to listen to you at that point? Like, no. And so why would you shoot yourself in the foot by doing that? But I remember, I think it was Mitchell talking about saying that he probably was doing it in saying, like, look how good I'm doing. Like, I'm really motivating the guy. And all I'm hearing is you're putting the guy down. You're insulting his coach he probably looked up to his whole life, you know, and you're insulting all these different things. And it's like, he's not going to listen to you anymore. You know? And if he is, it's because you have to do so much more work now to, like, get him back into the fold. That's what we're at. And that's why it's like, you got to be willing. I've seen Steve Kerr work with, like, Kuminga in a practice, and it was amazing, and it was simple, it was clear, and it was like a little bit funny, and it was like everything he needed to do, every point he needed to make made so much sense, and it wasn't anything that had to dismiss him or break him down and then build him up later. Like that just should be the way you coach, you know. And it's like, why wouldn't you want to do that and put yourself in that situation? You'd know. So at any rate, but again, I'm not what that mindset is not wrong. I'd say it's wrong, but it was so prevalent for so long that any coach that was doing it would have been like, wait, what are you talking about? This is how you coach. This is how it's books are written about this, right? So I don't blame them necessarily, but we now know that it's suboptimal. And, you know, again, Tibbs is in that boat. He's a little older than me, and he needs to be able to channel a little bit to some different things. And then, for God's sakes, he's got to let these guys play. Just let them play, let them develop. So what if you win 41 games instead of 43? Like, really, so what?
Right. Let me ask you. I mean, I'm not sure of how closely you followed his game, and I'm referencing Cam Reddish. Rob Al had a question. He said, Coach, what potential do you see in Cam Reddish on this team and in the league? Because this is another one of those very interesting questions, because honestly, it's like Cam Reddish is folklore. Like, everything you hear about Cam Reddish is, in high school and AAU days, like, this guy was a killer. But that's all then. Like, we've yet to see that type of Cam come out in the NBA. And so we're all very curious about what to expect from him.
So I was going to do a video. I want to say it was right before the 2021 season, where I was like, this is the guy to watch. I mean, he played a rookie year. There were some flashes, and I'm like, this guy, the Hawks are going to be good. He's going to be really good. DeAndre Hunter all of a sudden kind of became that guy that year, and I was like, so I was kind of glad I didn't do it, but I still was high on Cam Reddish. He got hurt, right? Then he comes back in the playoffs and has some nice moments there. He kind of reminds me of sort of like Corey Maggette to some degree in that same realm. And I think they both went to Duke. And Corey Maggette, for, you know, he might have driven me crazy from a coach's perspective, but the dude could play basketball, could really fill it up. And there's no question, I think Cam Reddish can really do that if he's given the opportunity. And I mentioned earlier, it's like, it just made no sense that they traded for him like they did. And like Tibbs didn't even play him at all. It's weird. Usually when that happens in a situation like that, you know, they get the benefit of the doubt for at least a little while, and they get to play for 10 games and see what they've got. So that was very strange from the beginning. So I think he's got a high ceiling. I mean, he could be better than Barrett. He's got more tool. I think he's got more physical, athletic ability than Barrett does, and that raises his ceiling. So I think he could ultimately make Barrett expendable, believe it or not.
Well, I will tell you, skill-wise, I do think that he could be better than RJ Barrett, but I just feel like he doesn't have the thing that you need, that intangible that it takes. So it's like RJ has it, but he doesn't have that same skill set that Cam possesses. If RJ had Cam's skill set, through the roof right now. Yeah. But, you know, they're definitely two different type of basketball players. I'm hoping that we get to see something out of Cam. I thought Cam was, I'll be honest, I'm telling people more, you know, this more now that he's a Knick than I was saying it before. I thought Cam was a little bit of a bust because I'm like, this guy's never healthy. I never see him out there on the court enough to even see what he can do. And then when he is out there, he seems very timid to me. So I can't see him being that generational or even transitional type star. And I like the way, you know, you look at a Zion or a Morant or even possibly to an extent a Barrett. Not that he's a generational talent, but I just think he could be a really solid NBA basketball player for years to come once he gets it all together. But yeah, Cam's got all the talent in the world. I just don't know if he could put it all together. Yeah,
and that's true. Their talent is related to being available and not getting hurt. So that's definitely a thing as well. So, and he doesn't have much left. He's probably got this year and maybe one more year to kind of establish himself as a valid NBA player, or else he probably won't be in the league very much after that. So, you know, man, I just hope he gets a good enough chance. I kind of just sort of, I put away the injury prone thing. I just sort of assume these guys are going to be healthy. I hate it. It's just kind of cynical when you kind of have to say, well, he's going to get hurt again, right? Now, you watch a guy like Anthony Davis who crashes the floor every other possession. It's easy now for me to say, yeah, he's going to get hurt. He breaks down. I understand why. But at least with Cam Reddish, I would like to think that, you know, he's young. He's going to straighten that out. He won't get hurt as much, and he'll show you. I think he will. I mean, I've seen enough evidence to know that he's got it. And so we'll see, you know, if he can just stay healthy and he gets, you know, enough minutes and he's in a positive frame of mind. Cam Reddish is that kind of guy who probably wouldn't, for some reason, I don't know him. I haven't ever really talked to him, but I just feel like he might not do well under an oppressive coach. Now, that said, you know, if there ever had been an oppressive coach, it's Coach K, because, you know, Coach K is basically Bobby Knight 2.0, and he's been able to keep his reputation a lot cleaner for whatever reason, and he did well there. So in theory, Tibbs should be a walk in the park compared to Coach K. But either way, I'm high on him. I think he's going to be good. I think if he gets the chance, he's going to show what he can do. I somehow found myself down a rabbit hole of RJ Barrett finishes at the rim. I was doing the video on Brunson. I don't know why, but I guess I had to do that for whatever. And I was so frustrating watching Barrett miss and really lack finishing skills that he needs, that he should have by now, and hopefully work down the summer. That I hope he gets that better too, because he's certainly going to get opportunities.
It's incredible. It's incredible that he has such poor finishing skills. I can't even imagine. It gets to the rim so easily. He's like a bull in a china shop sometimes, but sometimes he does things pretty gracefully, and he can still get there both ways. And yet, I think maybe he loses focus. He's trying so hard to get to the rim that once he gets to the rim, his creativity level, like, he just doesn't know exactly what he wants to do at the time. I mean,
he's a little bit robotic, he's a little bit stiff, and it's the quality of misses as well. Because, you know, you might go to the basket and like it hits every part of the rim and barely rolls out or whatever. Like that's okay, but like some of the misses he was doing were so off and so miscalibrated. That's what gets frustrated for me, because you shouldn't be that far off that consistently, and that's what I was noticing. But again, you know, his trainer is really good, Drew Hamlin. I'm assuming Drew is still working with him, and you know, if there's going to be a guy that's able to help him, it should be him. But you know, let's see, Drew's got his hands full, man. He's training all the top players now, so hopefully RJ's got some one-on-one attention from him, and he can work on that.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. I got a couple more for you, and then I get you out of here. I don't want to keep you too late because we could talk about basketball. I could see it. I can see it in you. We could talk about it forever.
All day. Absolutely.
So R. Taylor says, please explain how off-ball movement and ball movement, passing and spacing helps to develop non-ball dominant players.
Well, okay, that's a good question. Non-ball dominant players, which is almost everybody, right? Because there's only like one on each team, generally, or whatever. So when you cut off the ball, or let's say you set a screen on the weak side for a guy going to the basket. Well, the guy guarding the screener generally has to sort of move over in that direction just to make sure that the cutter isn't open. And by doing that, the guy screening gets open, gets opportunities to then cut and move and do that because of that motion. If you move on the weak side, oftentimes your man is looking at the ball and doesn't realize that you moved. And if you don't move, then it makes his job real easy. He could stare at the ball the whole time and guard you without having to do much. So it's that motion when the ball's on the other side of the floor that you can lure your man who's guarding, or hopefully he'll turn his head more than not. And that's when you can find the seams. Now you have to rely on a guy with the ball to pass it to you. And that's what becomes a frustrating experience for, I'm sure, a lot of people at a lot of levels when you're playing. You keep cutting, and they never see you. They never pass it. It gets, I know that's the more frustrating than anything when I would do that. But that's the reason why you do that kind of motion. Now, the other thing is skip. Like I did a video for coaches and players, the 4 must-have actions in your offense. And the 4th one is skip passing. At every level, the best offenses skip the ball across the court. Why? Because the defenses want to load up toward the ball, the strong side. And that means that if you're on the weak side, you're going to have space. But the only way to take advantage of that is by throwing the ball all the way across the court to you on a line. So that's the other reason why you want to move to find that open space and hope that they will do that, because now you can attack a closeout, and then now the defense is continually scrambling. I mentioned why the triple threat is dead, and that's one of the big reasons. If you catch the ball in triple threat, you're letting the defense catch up because you're never more open than when you catch the ball, right? As soon as you catch the ball, what's happening? The defense is now, they're coming at you. Every split second that goes by, you're less and less open. So why are you going to let them catch up by splitting and jab step and all that triple threat garbage? You want to be able to split and go right when you catch the ball, and now that guy is running in the other direction to try and catch up. Then you skip it again, and now your teammate's got an opening. So that's sort of the whole reason why you want to have the whole point of offense is to force closeouts, get an advantage, force a closeout, and attack that closeout right away. And that the movement on the weak side is a huge component of that. And you really can't get it that well without that kind of movement. The Celtics did it last year in the middle of the year. All of a sudden they turned a switch and they were attacking on the catch, skipping, attacking on the catch, skipping. And next thing you know, they're getting wide open threes and dunks. And that's all that reason is because they're screening on the weak side, they're cutting on the weak side, they're cutting the basket, and that just forces the defense to have to move out of positions and then opens it up for either you or a teammate. Wow.
Great question, R. Taylor. Appreciate it. And thank you for that breakdown and analysis of that question. That makes a lot of sense. Let's see here. Let me get 2 more and get you out of here.
Okay.
Let's see. Well, might as well ask this question because everybody's asking it, right? Jet Life for Life says, I have a question. How likely do you think Donovan Mitchell will get here this season, and how soon do you think it happens?
Well, I think we know one thing is for sure, that Donovan Mitchell is going to get traded, right? That's a for sure thing. So now, okay, which teams? There's 29 other teams he can go to. So the Knicks have a 1 in 29 chance, but we know he's not going to go to at least half of those teams. So now the Knicks have a 1 in 10 chance of getting him, right? Just on the numbers. Who has picks? The Knicks have picks, right? So now they're one of 4 teams that have enough picks, right, or whatever, that could maybe make that happen. But barring a 3-team trade or whatever, right, which are rare, but they happen, but rare. So now it's like maybe a 1 in 4 chance that they can get him. I know like maybe Miami wanted him or something, but nobody wants what's the guy from Wisconsin? Tyler Hero. No one wants Tyler Hero, I guess. So, so I would think it's, now it's a 1 in 4, 1 in 3 chance, right? There's maybe the Knicks and maybe 2 other teams that have a real viable shot at trading for him with the assets they have. So now we're getting somewhere, right? We have some idea of how likely that could be. I just worry. I don't think Donovan Mitchell is worth 2 first-round picks, and 2 starters. And I kind of feel like that's what they're asking. They might even be asking for more than that, right?
Oh, they're asking for a lot more,
right?
It's ridiculous.
So, so as a result, Mitchell is not going to get traded for, I don't think, unless a team is, does a dumb move. So that's the question. Do they want, it sounds like the Knicks are probably the most motivated, and they will be willing to part with guys like Cam Reddish. But again, you said he's not even in there. Who do they want? They want IQ. They want Obi.
Apparently, now this is all speculative, but the biggest speculative trade offer that's been out there and it's been moving around is that the Knicks would give up Obi Toppin, Emmanuel Quickly, Quentin Grimes, Evan Fournier for the money, and 5 or 6 first-round picks.
5 or 6?
5 or 6 first-round picks.
Right, because they could cut Fournier, they could whatever, they could just get whatever they wanted to not have those guys on the team. They don't want them. I would, if I were motivated to trade Mitchell, I would probably take IQ, Obi Toppin, maybe Grimes, and a first-round pick. If I was crazy, I would. I was really crazy, then maybe a second first-round pick. But that would be absolutely it. Otherwise, it's just not worth it at all. You might as well just run with what you got. So if that's what's happening and that's what they're going to stick to, then then he's not going to make it to the Knicks. But I don't know. The Knicks seem to be a little more disciplined these days, a little more competently run. Right? It's safe to say that. I think
I would agree with that. Yeah. I think Leon Rose is definitely trying to show us that he, and this is what I mentioned before, like everybody's going crazy and it's nothing, he's earned that right. People are talking about how much of a shrewd negotiator Danny Ainge is with these trades and how he gets these picks and finessing people. But what I was trying to say before is I think Leon Rose is trying to stake his claim as to who he can be as the president of basketball operations. He has been a very successful person running his own agency that's one of the top agencies in the NBA. He's at the top of his game in that arena. And now he's coming to this and he's trying to show that, hey, I'm no pushover. I know who you are as a negotiator and what you like to get. And I'm trying to tell you that this is what I see us giving up for this player. We don't want to give up more than that. And we're just going to have a little a game of chicken right now.
Right. That's what's going on. We know that Ainge had sat on potential trades for years and wouldn't make a move. So maybe Donovan ends up staying in Utah for another year. But I would sit tight. It's not worth it for the Knicks to give up that much that many assets and players. So I guess if we have to put a number on it, let's just say it's probably like 50-50, that it could happen, which is probably a cop-out as an answer. But that's probably what I'm thinking of is in terms of before the season starts or during the season, it's probably 50-50, which is, dicey.
Listen, I think that's the best way to answer. This is a tough one because who knows what's going to happen. And I really think, honestly, I've never been so much, so frustrated at something. The more time goes by, the more frustrated I am about it. I cannot believe that Minnesota gave up what they gave up for Rudy Gobert. Really is. If it wasn't for what Minnesota gave up, I think Donovan Mitchell would already be a Knick. But they set the bar, and Danny Ainge is running with it now. So,
oh yeah, and I've been on record for about just to show you where I'm coming from. I had said that they should break up Gobert and Mitchell 3 years ago.
Oh yeah,
I knew they weren't going to get where they wanted to go with that pairing, and here we are. And I actually talked myself into almost liking the trade, almost liking Gobert in Minnesota. I did a video just last week about that, and they'll be better. In the regular season, they'll be better, and better for them is probably 50 wins in the 4th seed in the West, maybe. And by the way, Mitchell and Brunson, okay, that's better, but it doesn't get them where they want to go, which I'm assuming is the NBA Finals. So that's the other interesting question they're going to have to deal with is is it fit, or are they just trying to grab talent and whoever they can that's the biggest name they can? I don't know. But at some point, you got to look more about personnel and roster versus just a name and how all those things fit together. And so that's the question of Leon Rose. Hopefully he can figure that out sooner than later.
Yeah. And
I feel like deserves a contender. It's silly that that you guys haven't been a contender for this long. It's crazy.
It's true. And I feel like it's probably what you're saying. It's part the fact that they want to obviously get into that elite conversation, be able to be a contender where they can start making deeper runs in the playoffs. Well, of course, you got to get in the playoffs, but make deeper runs in it, right? I think they also want to have that star quality. I mean, this is New York, bright lights, big city, and we don't have a real star to point to, right? So, and then 3, I think the other thing is the Donovan Mitchell effect. How does that affect the Knicks? How does having a star who's still fairly young, 25, going to be 26 years old, how does that go for attracting other people to want to play in New York? Because we've never, I mean, New York, it's like, it's almost like you're in Utah or Minnesota. It's hard to get a star, at least for the Knicks. For the Nets, it's a different animal. But for the Knicks, it's hard to get a star here. So,
yeah, but it makes it worse for the Knicks because look, the Nets did get Kyrie and KD. The Bulls put together. I mean, I think that they're going to be really good. Again, if they stay healthy, they're going to go right to the deep in the playoffs. I'm telling you, if the Magic do what I think they're going to do, and they're serious about winning this year, they can surpass the Knicks as well. And the Knicks would be like, wait, what just happened? How did we get vaulted over like this so easily? So again, it's crazy that growing up in Chicago and having to go and throw those battles, it's just crazy that both cities have sort of languished for a long time now.
Mm-hmm.
And the Bulls, went bold, and I think that they have a shot. They're really good when they're healthy, really good. Alonzo Ball is healthy. Like, that's a really good team. And the Knicks, and again, they did it through free agency and right, like mostly, and then maybe a one trade in there. There's no reason why the Knicks couldn't be doing that same thing when they just haven't been able to do it. So they got to turn it around. The Madison Square Garden is too special of a place and not put on a product that's worthy of it.
Right. Last question, guys. Just want to put this one out there because it's an interesting one that we've been talking about in Knicks circles. Because if not Donovan Mitchell, then what? Because I will say that we, as Knicks fans, we take a look at the roster, and we were running down the starting 5. And when you get through Jalen Brunson, let's say, who we start at the 2, I guess you could say Evan Fournier with this current regime of how it is. So say Jalen Brunson, Evan Fournier, RJ Barrett, Julius Randle, and then you've got Mitchell Robinson.
I like the Isaiah Hartenstein pickup, by the way.
Oh yeah, Hartenstein's a good pickup too. So then you think about coming off the bench. Here's the one that gets real tricky for people. I keep saying that the 6th man off the bench healthy will be Derrick Rose. People, a lot of people feel like Derrick Rose will be situational because of the way the team is constructed. But I think, Derrick Rose is Tibbs' like #1 guy, and if he's healthy, and then also we're a year removed from his, basically helping get us into the playoffs in Julius Randle's most improved season. Some people say Julius Randle was the key ingredient, but others argue it was Derrick Rose. If it wasn't for all those games that Derrick Rose helped us win in the fourth quarters, we wouldn't have gotten to that point. So my thing was, I was saying Derrick Rose would be the backup point guard right off the bench, the 6th person. Then you got a Quentin Grimes, Cam Reddish, Obi Toppin, and Hartenstein. And that's 10. And I didn't even mention Emmanuel Quickly. So that's why I think you get a little crazy.
Yeah, ideally Rose should play 20 minutes a game, right, until the playoffs or whatever. You could bump him up to 25. But I don't know if Tibbs is going to do that or not. Let's see. Rose barely played last year, right? Am I crazy?
Yeah, he was hurt a lot. Yeah, he got hurt. Rose played. He hurt. Yeah.
And he played 24.5 minutes a game. Like, he probably should play 22 minutes a game. You know what I mean? And so that means that Quickly will get more minutes on that end too, because Rose won't play this 30-minute first guard off the bench. So Rose could be the first guard off the bench, but he's not going to get the kind of minutes that guy would normally get. So Quickly should soak up some of those as well. I hope, because I think he's going to be good, and he deserves to play 25 minutes a game. Again, not easy to do when you're trying to go 9 or 10 deep, but that's going to be an interesting question. And now Hartenstein, by the way, I like on a good team, he's a nice piece to bring off the bench as a big man. I don't know if the Knicks are that good team, so we'll find out if he actually look as good because he looked really nice on the Clippers. They had a nice core going, and even though they had injuries as well. And then, at what cost? Now, Jericho Sims doesn't get any run probably because of that, which is too bad because he has some ability, and they're very similar. So is Hartenstein lefty? I feel like he's a lefty. He's awkward, but is he lefty? Because they have what's all the lefties all of a sudden? They can play all.
I think Hartenstein is a lefty. So now you got 4 lefties in it. Yeah, I think he is a lefty. He is.
Is he? I don't know where.
I think he is.
Yeah, versatile left-handed player. So it's like, between him and Barrett and Brunson and Randall, like, I don't know, can you run an offense that way? Because most lefties are lefty dominant. And by the way, weirdly enough, lefties can only go left a lot of time, and they still are really effective for whatever reason. But I don't know what that means. It's almost like having an infield, all lefties in the infield, which you couldn't do, right? Because you can't play second base with a lefty or whatever. I wonder if there's something like that where like the defense can shift a certain way because there's so many lefties. I don't know.
Right.
But, why not? Hey, listen, we should try it. Another Knicks podcast I was on, we were talking about like what kind of fun lineups they could run out there. Like get top in the center, go really ultra small ball, and play Obi at center, and then you can go, Cam Reddish, Julius Randle, Barrett, and Brunson. Just like go really small and see if you can spread the floor and do some damage. Or I don't even know if Randle's in that thing. It might have even been like quickly go really small, top in, have Cam Reddish play the 4, have Barrett play the 3. And then you have Brunson and Quickly or something in the backcourt and really just spread it and go. They have some options. They could have some fun with it, but I don't know if Tibbs is going to get out of the box enough to try it.
Right. So this was the last question I had. Thank you, Justin L. What did Coach think about post All-Star game break IQ? I don't know if you really know too much about how he played after the All-Star break. I could tell you he played a lot better, much more efficient. He was a lot more consistent with his shooting because he struggled a little mightily in the first half of the season with his shooting. And the second half, he got a lot better, a lot more consistent. He averaged around 15 or 16 points. And then, of course, the last 10 games of the season, he really showed something, but there was a lot of garbage being, not a lot of teams were playing their best players. So it took away from his accomplishments. But I mean, I think he had 2 or 3 triple doubles during that time. Like he really played pretty good basketball. And so he also said, if Spider isn't the fix, do you think waiting for a wing like Wiggins in free agency next year would be a good move?
I mean, the question now is like, well, okay, let's get to the first part of it. So I've always liked Quickly. He just came in, and what was the word I like to use? He was not intimidated. He was unintimidated by the moment and by the players, which I really like. When a young player comes in there and wants to take it, I gravitate to those kind of guys all the time. Guys like that, like Jimmy Butler came in right away, and you could see it. Even in the limited playing time he got, he was like, no one's going to mess with him. And so I thought Quickly had that same kind of mindset, and he's good. He's got ability. We've seen it across enough seasons now to know that he could be a very viable guard in the NBA. So without question, he needs to get 25 minutes a game minimum. He needs it. I hope he gets it. And if they don't get Donovan Mitchell, is Wiggins the same guy away from Steph and Clay and then that system, right?
That's what I've been saying.
It's really frustrating when a guy like that says, oh, my God, you mean you have to play hard on every possession? I had no idea. And he kind of made that realization, which is great. And I love it. And man, was he the MVP of that team pretty much in the playoffs. But like, how do you get to your 7th year and then finally realize that? Like, that's ridiculous. Now, he's really good, though. I mean, he'd be a two-way player for them, and someone who's a nice piece, but like obviously wouldn't be. I mean, it depends next year if they're going to sign him, who the number 1 is and who the number 2 is. Him as a number 3 is a championship title. Him as a number 2-ish, 2.5 could be a championship contender. You know what I mean? Like he got to that level enough times in the playoffs last year. But they're gonna that version of Wiggins would require another addition to the team that they don't have right now.
Right. Yeah. And I try to say that you cannot undervalue how good that Golden State system is and how good the player base is on that team. It's like Wiggins just has to fill in his role and he can be the best version of himself. He doesn't have that added pressure he had being in Minnesota, being looked at as a number 1, number 2 type guy over there. He's like a 3 or 4 over in Golden State, and he can do it freely. And so when he comes to play, that extra oomph that he brings the team is like, it's incredible. But you forget, still got, Klay Thompson over there. You still got Steph Curry over there. You still got Draymond doing what Draymond does. Like it matters. So
yeah, and listen, as a number 3 or whatever, he played like a number 1 at times. He bailed them out sometimes when I was sitting on the bench, and he really was able to finish play. So, and it took him a year or two to kind of get acclimated, even though his numbers were good in the first 2 years in Golden State. It's actually the first year was only a couple of games, but then the second year or whatever. But you could still see he was learning and he's still getting comfortable. And it took him that much time to figure that out. When can I be number 1 on this possession? When should I lay back and be number 2 or number 3? And now that he's figured that out, he's going to be, they're going to have another fantastic year again. And it's not even fair because they're going to have Kuminga is going to be great. I think Moses Moody's going to be great. James Wiseman's a future all-star. Like they're just loaded, and they can literally play Steph less than 20 or 30 minutes a game if they want to, really, and probably win a ton of games anyway. They can nurture Klay, as he's again on the way back. And again, they win 55 games instead of 58, like big deal. You know what I mean? And then meanwhile, Moses Moody and Wiseman, those guys just develop off the charts. Jordan Poole, is probably going to be better as well. So it's going to be fun to watch who's going to knock him off or who can.
I agree. All right. Well, Coach, I know I said that was my last question for you, and technically it really is. I just had one little thing on our way out of here because it's going crazy right now. Like people are overreacting, and maybe it's because we don't have any real basketball happening, or people just have high expectations and a little disappointed with the Donovan Mitchell stuff. People are losing their minds over the fact that in a pickup game, Julius Randle, Jalen Brunson, and Obi Toppin went up to Hostess, and they lost the game by 13 points. How do you feel about the importance of a pickup game, wins and losses with NBA starting type players?
I've been to a bunch of those games, and the intensity levels varies. It's not good, but maybe it makes sense in the sense that they have 3 players who really don't shoot threes. Right, Brunson doesn't shoot a high volume, and I don't know if he did or not in this game, but I'm sure he was backing guys down and getting in the lane. I need to watch the whole game or whatever. Randall certainly isn't. That's not his forte either. It's not really for Obi. Well, actually, wait. Correct me if I'm wrong. Obi does shoot 3 sometimes, right?
Yeah. If you allow him to be free with the shooting, he actually had a really good percentage down the stretch when he got good playing time. In times where he shot 8 or 10 threes, he would hit 50% of them.
Right. So, and not like high volume, although he hasn't played a ton of minutes. So I guess in some respects, if you're going to have the ball dominant guys like Randall and Brunson, and they're going to be getting in the lane, they're going to be shooting mid range a lot of the time, probably in those kind of games. And the other team's coming down and nailing, I would venture a guess if the other team made 5, 6, or 7 more threes than Randall's team. And again, like we say in the NBA, that's like, you're not going to win those games. I bet you that was a big factor. I don't know this. I'm talking out my butt, but I suspect that was it, because of those guys just not being high volume 3-point shooters. But it's a little concerning. It is a little concerning. Those, you should never lose when you got 3 NBA players on the team.
Right.
Never.
Right. I got to tell
you, a lot of difference. You know what I mean?
My whole thing is I get it. It's not a great look. Like that's not what you want to see. But I want to say a couple things to think about here is, one, I guess there was I didn't watch the whole thing. I only saw bits and pieces. But apparently there was at some point in the game that Julius Randle almost got hurt. Now, Julius Randle is not known for giving, 100% effort on the defensive end to begin with. Mm-hmm. And apparently he almost got hurt on that end. So at that point, you're going to see even less of Julius Randle, right? Now, think about the players that are actually out there. Julius Randle, Obi Toppin, Jalen Brunson. Julius Randle is a very good defender at his position, but on the perimeter, running around with these short guys shooting, he's not going to do much there. Obi Toppin is a poor defender. Jalen Brunson gives effort, but he's not a great defender. So these are the type of guys that they may go out there and score their points, but they're not stopping the opposing team, as opposed to when you watch these other highlights of Scotty Barnes and these other guys. They're getting up in people's faces, they're clapping, they're trying to get. It's a different mix. I didn't like the 3 that were out there. And Emmanuel Quickley was supposed to be the 4. That would have been even worse if they would have lost. But with Quickley there, I don't think they would have lost.
Right.
Because
Oh, good
he's
point.
already shown he's starting to turn into a pretty good defender.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I don't know if I feel amazingly great about this Knicks team going into the season anyway. And this is just another reason to sort of feel that way, but it doesn't really have a bearing, when we actually get in the NBA games. But it doesn't help. It doesn't help a narrative at all. But, the bottom line is I whatever we might be feeling or trying not to feel about that game, I am feeling. And so I don't, and I know it's not a hot take. It's just what it's going to probably end up being. And it is what it is until they can kind of continue to shape this roster in a different way.
Yeah. And last thing I was going to say about this to everybody who's watching and in the chat, listen, guys, it's not a great look, but don't put all your stock in it. It's not the greatest symbol of your new squad, but don't put all your stock in it, because while things happen, I mean, Kyle Kuzma just scored 67 points. And he was primarily guarded by Scotty Barnes, one of the best defenders in the league, young defenders in the league. He put up 67 points. Does that mean Scotty Barnes is a bum and Kyle Kuzma is the next coming of Kobe? I don't think so. So nope. I'm just saying.
Yeah, but don't sleep on Kuzma, man. He's good.
No, he. Let me tell you, Kyle Kuzma has some moments where he can light you up. So yeah. Well, I gotta say thanks again, Coach. This has been incredible. I was so excited to have you here to be able to chop it up with you, just to pick your brain just about all the knowledge and stuff the insights you have, but to be able to have you for 2 hours. I mean, this is incredible. So thank you for being here with us. And I can't thank you enough. Thank you to the chat for tuning in. I'm surprised that more people haven't tuned in, because I just can't believe all of the knowledge and all the nuggets you've been giving tonight. So thank you for being here once again.
My pleasure. Anytime. Great conversation. Listen, I wouldn't have gone 2 hours if I wasn't enjoying it. So thank you so much for being part of that. And thanks. Great questions and everybody out there. And looking forward to some of the people coming over and watching our live shows and videos too in the rest of the year, rest of the summer. Definitely.
And I know I'm trying to catch everyone. I just saw the one you did the other day. So whenever you're going on, I get my alerts and stuff. So definitely, guys, like, comment, subscribe to BBall Breakdown. Make sure you hit that notification bell so you're notified when everything gets dropped. No, don't. That's a common mistake, a misnomer in the YouTube community. Don't just hit the subscribe button and hit the notification bell. Make sure you hit the top one that lets you know whenever they're dropping content, because that's how you stay in tune. So once again, thanks to my co-host John. He had to go, but it was fun chopping it up with him and Coach, and also my guy Jose, who was in the background on the ones and twos. Y'all didn't see him, but he was in the back. I could see him down there. He was in the background. So thanks once again, Coach. We look forward to having you in the future. Maybe sometime during the season, if see how things are going. There might be some stuff that we're going to need some insight from you about, because I'm sure there's going to be some crazy stuff that happens this year.
Absolutely. Anytime. Just let me know and I'll be there.
Sounds good, man. Thank you for being here. And, have a great rest of your night and enjoy your dinner. I know I will enjoy mine.
All right.
And we look forward to catching you on your show and hopefully getting you back here in the future.
Great. I'm in.
All right. Sounds good. Take care, Coach. See you on the next one. All right, guys. Well, thank you for tuning in. Appreciate you guys always supporting the content. Thank you for supporting Nothing But Knicks and everything we have. As my guy John would say, stay blessed out there. Take care of yourselves and your family. Salute to the whole MBK family. Make sure you guys tune into the Queen's Court, Knicks and Bruises. Josh, aka Uncle Fulio, and the Controversy, all of Sim shows, post games, pre-games, anything, shoot-arounds, anything that Sim drops, make sure you check that out. And also International Andy show, which I don't know what the name of that show is still, but I'm gonna find out. Tune in to whenever Andy drops information for us, because those shows are great, man. This has been fantastic. Don't forget to tune in to Still Knick Fans as well. Every Monday night at 9 p.m., the SKF Weekly. On Saturdays, 11 a.m., the Know the Ledge series. So, yeah, man, continue to support us. We're going to continue to try to give you more and more good content. And while we're in the off season, this is all about us trying to give you guys interviews and guests, because once we get into the full swing of the NBA season, we'll go back to our normally scheduled programming, just chopping it up and talking about what we see. But thank you guys for always supporting. As I always say, tell a friend who tells a friend who tells another friend. Still Knick fans. We'll be back again. So guys, I appreciate you all. Hopefully you enjoyed the show. Thank you guys for all your questions and your participation. It's been fantastic. Have a great rest of your night. And listen, let's just hope that no matter what we've seen so far, it's only good things ahead for us in this New York Knicks squad. To people who are fans of other teams, shout out to y'all. I'm sorry this was a very Knick heavy show towards the end, but it's not so often you get a guy like Coach Nick here to be able to break down the X's and O's and talk about your team. Hopefully we get him on again later for the NBA report and we can break down some of the other stuff going on around the NBA. So guys, stay tuned for that. So take care. Have a great rest of your evening or a great rest of your night. I'm going to try to watch the ending of this giant preseason game and maybe watch the replay to see how we did for the most part. That's all I got. I'll catch you guys. Take care. Run that shit.